Assalamu alaikum everyone, all the participants today.
Walaikum salam.
I find, mashallah, there are about 135 participants, which is perhaps possible in a digital, environment. In a classroom setting, I would be very reluctant to address 135 participants, obviously, because it's that much easier in a digital environment. So this is the first thing that perhaps is relevant that we can see here, that communication has become much more effective. And if it comes to Islamic social finance education, we can already see the impact of digitalization, that it's possible to have very large classes and where students are coming from different parts of the globe, and the instructor is coming from another part of the globe, but still we can sit together and very systematically discuss things that are of interest to us. Now, I understand the previous session was devoted to Islamic social finance and digitalization as well by my able ex-colleague, Professor Masoom Billah. So I would be basically looking at some issues which to my mind are important when it comes to digitalization in the context of Islamic social finance. I have shared a document with you written by some time back. This is more about the potential of digitalization for Islamic social finance, where I have briefly discussed the potential of digital identities, how it can be used for in the context of humanitarian finance. And I have also discussed the possible use of, potential use of digital technologies like blockchain for the purpose of, zakat and awqaf management. Both I have discussed there. And also some possible use cases of, technology like artificial intelligence, also in the context of, zakat management and awqaf management, and of course, zakat-funded microfinance and so on and so forth. So this paper, if you read, perhaps it gives you in a nutshell the various possibilities, the various potential areas of application of technology for Islamic social finance. But what I'm going to present to you today is a little beyond that. I'm not talking about potential, but I'm talking about what is actually happening around us. So I'll be sharing with you some examples, some real life examples of how this potential is on the way to be realized. We can't say that, okay, this technology has started yielding very good results and we have applied blockchain technology for our zakat platforms. Yes, there have been some initiatives around us and there have been some work going on for various applications of technology and digitalization for zakat, awqaf, and not-for-profit microfinance. Together, as we know, Islamic social finance has these different components. So I'll be citing a few examples and let me share my screen with you. And then I'll be discussing some issues which to my mind are somewhat relevant. Okay, are you able to see the slides, all of you?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's proceed.
Yes, sir. We can see.
There are a few points that I would like to highlight, underline first. And my entire presentation would be around this few points that I feel are very, very important when it comes to discussing digitalization in the context of Islamic social finance. Now, broadly, if we see Islamic finance, the mainstream Islamic finance as we understand, comprising Islamic banking, Islamic insurance, or Islamic investments. Now, the for-profit segment, where the objective of the institutional objective or the organizational objective is more aligned towards maximization of wealth of the stakeholders, or shareholder wealth maximization, and they basically target at making profits or maximizing their profits. Now, that is one sector which we can call it mainstream Islamic finance. In contrast to that, we have the Islamic social finance sector. Now, I'm not going to discuss things or the digitalization in the context of Islamic banking or the for-profit sector, insurance or investments. We'll basically be restricting to ourselves to social finance. Now, the first point I would like to make is that when you're talking about Islamic philanthropy, which is a major component of Islamic social finance, now, Islamic banking doesn't have a very long history, or Islamic insurance, or takaful, or Islamic investment funds, Islamic real estate funds, and you name it. The institutions or the organizations that you find, the different tools of that are used there, or the different products and solutions that are being used in the mainstream Islamic banking, finance, and financial services, they do not have a very long history. Unlike that, if you talk about zakat, if you talk about waqf, they have got a very long history, and they're deeply rooted not only in historical institutions, but also deeply rooted in local culture. So local culture also plays a very strong role in how zakat is going to be collected, how zakat is going to be mobilized, and how zakat is going to be distributed. What is the best way to distribute, how to identify the asnaf, and how to really follow an institutional structure, whether it should be a decentralized one, a localized one, or we can really send zakat to far-off places. Now, all these issues are basically rooted. You have local customs, they play a very strong role, and the historical legacy or the historical practices, they, to a large extent, they influence the way Islamic social finance is going to be practiced. And that also applies to any kind of digitalization that is going to be attempted within the Islamic financial context. The second point I would like to make is that, again, unlike commercial banking, for example, or insurance or investments, of course, Sharia compliance is very important. And if a particular organization is somehow perceived to stay beyond the line defined by Sharia compliance, then this organization is, of course, going to suffer in terms of reputation, in terms of credibility, in terms of it might see a departure of depositors and investors, quite possible. But if you see in the context of zakat and awqaf institutions, the importance of reputational capital is far more important. If you look around, you will find that zakat institutions are all over there in every country. But a few zakat institutions are able to raise a large amount of quantum of funds, primarily because they enjoy a very high degree of credibility. They enjoy a high degree of reputation among the zakat payers, among the zakat givers. Similarly, awqaf, we know if you try to develop a awqaf property, it is always the local community that has to be taken into consideration, taken into confidence, and they will not let you, tinker with any awqaf property without having a solid justification and without being fully, without having a full understanding of what is being attempted. So the same doesn't apply in case of commercial finance. Reputational capital is important, and innovations are being tried out. There is a trade-off always. You run the risk of losing your credibility if your innovation fails. But this risk is far greater in the context of zakat and awqaf and what we understand as Islamic social finance, because we are talking about the society, its interest, and the stakeholders, they all belong to the society. They have a say. So local customs, history, they all have a say in this. The third point I would like to make is zakat, sadaqah, and waqf, usually clubbed as social finance, have unique Sharia stipulations. Every other Islamic financial tool or product also has Sharia stipulations. But you find there are unique Sharia stipulations for zakat, sadaqah, and waqf, and so on and so forth. For zakat, for example, Sharia very clearly defines who are the eligible beneficiaries. You don't have a similar, restriction in the context of an Islamic bank. Anybody can be a depositor. Anybody can, be an investor. But when it comes to zakat, Sharia has a lot more additional constraints it imposes on who can pay zakat. For instance, you have very elaborate rules of zakat estimation, and one has to pay zakat as stipulated by the different rules, and he has to gain a good understanding of that, or he can seek advice from the ulama and somehow estimate his zakat liability and pay it. And when he pays it, he is fully accountable for it, he or she. And at the same time, when zakat funds are going to be utilized, they have to follow the very clear Sharia norms. And any violation of that is likely to strike very hard at the credibility of the zakat institution. Similarly, in case of awqaf, we have very elaborate rules formulated over the years, over ages. And as I said, it's a historical institution. Therefore, you try to tinker with any of the rules relating to awqaf, you run a huge reputational risk. That is the reason why when we talk about digitalization, and often digitalization goes with innovation. So when you try to innovate something new and introduce for a zakat institution or for a waqf institution, we have a greater trade-off, possibility of trade-off between reputation, capital, and the innovation. So on an average, I think if you want to encourage innovation in the Islamic social finance field, then we should follow one very safe principle, which is innovation should lead to better Sharia compliance, and ideally it should avoid areas of disagreement. If you have any areas in which you have Sharia scholars holding different views, then this is best avoided when you try to bring in an innovation. Okay. So this is something that we can, proceed with as a basic principle when we talk about digitalization or the innovation that are related to digitalization. They should lead to better Sharia compliance. Now, how is it going to happen, or how it has happened? Platformization, or using platforms, online platforms, in general, like what has been happening in the context of charity crowd funds or zakat-based crowd funds. And if you are an observer of the Islamic fintech scene, you'd be knowing that this is one area where you have seen the maximum Islamic fintech companies operating. They have been more successful offering charity crowd funds or collecting zakat and sadaqah through their crowd funds. And we have some very good examples: Global Sadaqah, Malaysia, and you name it. There are Indonesia, we have Kitabisa, and we have many other, such, players with long years of experience, and they have had reasonable success in mobilizing zakat and sadaqah funds. Now, what is happening here is that use of the platform, actually, it is leading to more of transparency. If I'm a zakat payer or a sadaqah giver, I can always choose the projects that I want to invest in. In the absence of platform, what would happen? If you just have to go and pay your zakat to a credible zakat institution. That's it. but you have no way to perhaps understand unless you are very, very curious and overzealous. You might be perceived as overzealous when you ask questions to the Zakat organization, their managers, that how you are going to use our Zakat money. Tell us in detail. Now, of course, if they're efficient Zakat managers, they will share all the information. But certainly, the transparency can be ensured that much more effectively, efficiently, and accountability can be ensured if through the use of platforms. Because in person-to-person zakat, P2P zakat, which can be or a decentralized form of zakat payments, sadaqah payment, or let's say cash waqf payment, donations, then it's quite possible to ensure that the funds which are coming in for a specific project, they're actually being channelized for that project alone and no other project. So this can be done through blockchains, the application of blockchain technology. This can be done, and this has been attempted by, being attempted by many crowd funds, and basically to ensure that, at all times, it's possible to trace. If I have paid $1 to the Zakat organization A, then I should be in a position to access data, the transaction through which my donation has taken place, and to, if the Zakat institution has made a good use of blockchain technology, it can also share the information with me. I can see for myself how the money is going to be utilized. So this is in general what has happened, that there is a greater transparency and accountability that is now possible because of use of platforms. So therefore, we can say that this innovation has basically led to better Sharia compliance. Now let us look at a few more use cases, good examples. Now, some of you, those who are familiar with the SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 16, it talks about promoting peace and justice. And one corollary of that, which is 16.9, this basically aims at bringing legal identity to everyone in the world by the year 2030. Within the Sharia domain, we also, if you think in terms of the maqasid of Sharia, giving a legal identity to a person is equally important. So whether it is legal identity or a digital identity, at the end of the day, you need to establish the identity of the person to be able to better distribute your zakat. Only then you can be seen to fulfill your Sharia conditions relating to asnaf. Now, digital identities could be based on, blockchain technology, which can, let's say, take the form of token, or it can also take the form of vouchers, online, virtual vouchers. Now, talking about digital identities, we have a couple of use cases here that I would like to share with you. One of the first use case here, that is a winner of Islamic FinTech Challenge organized by Islamic Development Bank Group and IE Business School, I think about a couple of years back. It is an innovation by the team of International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. They were trying to provide, benefits, cash, and other benefits to Syrian refugees in a particular camp. Now they utilized, it's a pilot study, pilot example, pilot use case of a solution that is developed by EdTech. Basically, the solution is in terms of a digital credit cards, which are given to the Syrian refugees, and they could use that card in a designated camp store. So you don't have a possibility of a paper-based voucher being torn or being stolen or being sold in a black market to somebody who really tries to build a black market in that. Now, this kind of or pilferage, these possibilities are completely ruled out the moment you are bringing in blockchain. Because now this card can be used as a digital identity. It can be used only by the person concerned. And also the person concerned can use it only in a designated camp and where a certain amount of goods and commodities are given to him against use of that particular digital card. So basically the on-chain status, which means this transaction is on the blockchain, this enables the online monitoring in real time. You can see it in any part of the world, but you can still monitor every single transaction. And you can see how it takes care of the problem of fraudulent copies of paper-based vouchers, which are very common to distribution of humanitarian aid for refugees or internally displaced persons. Now, they have unique QR codes on smart cards or mobiles. Now, this can ensure distribution of social benefits in a very transparent way. Now, use of unique digital identity, it also allows documentation of information such as eligibility, entitlement packages, and implementation of those systems such as automated periodic payments. Now, we will see next how the automatic period payments, how it is taken care of for a specific project, again by EdTech in Tanzania. This project basically is, if you relate it, map it to SDGs, it is about SDG 3.2 to end preventable deaths of newborns and to reduce neonatal mortality. How you're going to use blockchain here or smart contracts? You can distribute your healthcare entitlements to expecting mothers in a completely transparent manner. Now, if she has a mobile phone, then the expecting mother, then at every milestone that she needs a checkup, or she needs some specific kind of care, then along the journey of pregnancy, there is a record that when that milestone comes, then she gets an alert on her mobile phone, and then she needs to go to the clinic, identified clinic, where she is provided the care. And again, this can be monitored thousands of miles away because these transactions are being executed on a blockchain technology and using smart contract. So this physical distance between, let's say, the central office, which is monitoring, and where actually it is being done at the project office, doesn't really matter anymore the moment you have these transactions taking place on a blockchain. I'll just very quickly talk about another potential product. This has not been developed as of now. This is a blockchain-based smart voucher developed by Islamic Development Bank Institute. I belong to this institution. And here, as a group, we developed a product, a very similar product that I was just talking about, which provides a digital identity. And also, based on that identity, it provides for a blockchain-based voucher, which comprises a sum of cryptocurrency. And they are bound by a set of rules, which earmark that the voucher can be used only in certain transactions between the user and any of a set of one or more authorized providers of goods and services. So entire validation of this, the user, the provider of goods and services, the transaction, everything is being validated on chain, and therefore you have a fully transparent flow of humanitarian aid from the government or from the NGO which is working in that field into the hands of the poor and the needy. Now, if we just focus on the digital identity, we know that the SDG 10C is, again, talks about bringing the cost of remittances down to below 3% by the year 2030 and to eliminate remittance corridors of greater than 5%. For example, in Somalia, it can be over 20%. So use of tokens, use of cryptos, and basically it allows you, it gives you a digital identity. You are, with a digital identity, you can do remittances to far off places in a very, very costless manner at a very minuscule cost. And this is already, we are trying it out here with Islamic cryptos called IBF exchange tokens, which have just been introduced by IBFnet. And these tokens basically sit on algos, which are, globally acceptable tokens. And use of these tokens can facilitate instantaneous transaction of funds from one part of the planet to another part of the planet. So therefore, if you're talking about, achieving your SDG 10.C, then Here is the answer. So it's all possible provided the regulatory framework allows it. Then this can be instantaneous and costless. Remittances can really flow from one part of the planet to another part. Now from digital identity, let us see what else we have in our portfolio. Again, we follow the same basic principle. Innovation should lead to better Sharia compliance, use of platforms to enhance transparency and accountability. Now here one possibility that emerges that was not there before is that we can measure the impact of our sadaqah, zakat, awqaf, or for that matter, any kind of intervention targeted at achieving any SDG or any maqasid al-Sharia based on milestones. We fix milestones, and then based on milestones achieved, then the charity funds can be released. So we have one such product here, platform called IBF Recurrence, where recurring charity can be passed on into the hands of beneficiaries or to the projects based on milestones achieved by project implementation agency, and so that there is periodic release of funds under an overall large commitment. For example, I have a project where eye operations of the blind is taking place, and I approach a donor who is, who likes the idea of who wants to donate to this particular project. And let's say he wants to donate 50,000 USD for this project. But then he wants the impact to be there on the field. He or she is not just comfortable, handing over this $50,000 to the project and sit quietly. They would like to see the impact based on milestones. So maybe through this charity now, what they can do, they can make a large overall commitment. Yes, we want to donate 50,000 US, but then there are 5 milestones. If you have a target of, let's say, having 10,000 blind operations, then at the end of every 2,000 operations, you are supposed to provide evidence of these operations having taken place successfully. Then we release the second installment of the donations. And this entire process can be automated through the use of platforms and can be made transparent. There's another product where we can see the impact is being measured, and also impact can be bought and sold. That is this particular project, we can call it Islamic Value Analytics, again, set up by IBF recently, which basically gives a scoring to projects based on maqasid al-Sharia and SDGs. And that is one way of, it's very much like the, credit scores or behavioral scores given by, different agencies. So there's an independent agency providing scores based on the perception of the stakeholders regarding the achievement, existing or potential of a particular project of either maqasid al-Sharia or SDGs or both. Now coming to recurrence, this is the example of the recurrence platform. You can see it here, that basically it is about, recurring transactions taking place under a single commitment. You have recurring donations using fiat and crypto payment methods, which basically expands the, kitty. You have, if you accept crypto payments as well, you can have a, broader variety of range of donations to take place. And that is expected to enhance the overall, donation, the corpus. Now, again, coming back to the original point again, let us see what else we have here. Incentivization of efforts or volunteering via social cryptos. Now, this is quite possible using blockchain technology. Now, all of us know that for Islamic social finance, how much important volunteering is, or spending, or making sadaqah of efforts. We are all aware of the very well-known hadith where the Prophet, peace be upon him, advised, his companions that if you cannot make sadaqah of funds, then make sadaqah of efforts. So, and we all know that volunteering is an integral part of any work organization or any social organization. But mostly what happens is such efforts, they are not objectively measured. And also, they are assumed to be free for all times. So either I'm a volunteer, I'm giving my efforts free of cost completely, or I give nothing. For example, I'm a doctor. Either I work in a charity hospital accepting nothing, or I work in a commercial hospital. This whole process is kind of inefficient, because if we can introduce a way to integrate this efforts and somehow relate that to a market and allow a volunteer that if need be, he or she can partially monetize their efforts, which are now objectively measured in the form of social cryptos or social tokens, then we would have added to the supply of such volunteering hours. Now, that is what this particular platform, IBF Net Benevolence, tries to achieve. And it tries to integrate Sadaqah of funds and also, assets and efforts, volunteering as well as donations. And then there is a possibility of a volunteer now working for or contributing his efforts at a below market rate. So it's not that he either gets zero or as a free volunteer or he has to charge the market rate. No, he can decide for himself, at what rate he can make his both ends meet, take care of his basic expenditure, and also contribute to the society free of cost. So therefore, he has, as he contributes his efforts, these are objectively measured through the platform, which now allocates, tokens, social cryptos, based on the quantum of effort or the quality of effort that is put in by the volunteer. And this is what is, again, available for monetization on exchange. We have a similar example here also, very recent case of measuring and documenting air quality. This is the platform called Planet Watch, where the planets are utility tokens. One can earn these tokens by volunteering, basically. You buy a sensor, basically, and you measure the air quality in your house, in your locality, and send this information to a database, to the database of this particular company. So the company now has a centralized and a huge database where, it has data pertaining to the air quality. And this is being facilitated by volunteering work, and who are again incentivized through planets, or what are called, which are a type of utility tokens. Similarly, we have the example of, climate trade, another project. And this is also being tried out by IBF in the Maqasid framework, where you provide for a marketplace where, a particular project, let's say a Waqf, which has got huge tracts of land, but now it is doing plantation on that. And for specific types of plants, we have very, very well documented data on the carbon savings they do. And the carbon savings is a kind of savings in social cost, which can be expressed in dollar terms. So based on the scientific methods, you can always convert the savings in social cost into social tokens or green tokens, which will be credited to the account of this Waqf. Now, this Waqf can sell these tokens on the exchange, on the crypto exchange, to another company, which is, let us say, leaving a lot of carbon footprint because it is emitting a lot of smoke, or it is into some kind of a burning of trees, forests, for its carrying on its factories and its manufacturing activities. Therefore, it would like to be perceived as a client or a climate neutral company. Instead of planting trees afresh, it can always approach our Waqf and buy some of their green tokens from their credit by paying dollars, and this which the Waqf can again utilize for planting, giving it back to the earth by planting more trees. So in a way, we can see now blockchain enables, as long as you can measure the impact, then you can create an impact exchange by converting the impact after you measure it into tokens of value. Now, these tokens have got value, and these tokens can always, exchange between a deficit unit and a surplus unit. I may be a carbon surplus unit, or I may be a carbon deficit unit. So if I'm a carbon deficit unit and I want to be perceived well in the market, and maybe there is a legal requirement for me, laws are going to penalize me, or I have to pay taxes, additional taxes because I pollute the environment, then maybe I would like to neutralize my position by going to such markets and buying these tokens. So this is something, again, that is very, very relevant in the Islamic social finance field. So we have a way to integrate in the benevolence space what is traditionally viewed as two distinct types of action. I'm talking about the benevolence platform, which has just had a soft launch very recently, and you're going to see perhaps in a week or two the platform now being fully operational. So it allows the integration of the charity or donation of funds and the contribution of time or volunteering of efforts. So in the process, it is enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of the twin processes of mobilization and allocation of scarce benevolence-driven resources for Islamic zakat, waqf, and not-for-profit sectors. So I can also talk about another platform, which is for Islamic microfinance, but based on Qard-e Hasana. We all know about the different Islamic microfinance experiments. Some of them are in the for-profit domain. Some are into making modest profits, more in the interest of sustainability. But there are also pure funds like Qard-e Hasana Fund. We have the example of Akhuwat, for example, which recently was awarded in 2021, the Raman Magsaysay Award for contribution to the society. Now they use a pure Qard-e Hasana model. Now for such Qard-e Hasana operations, can we make them more efficient, more transparent using the blockchain-based platforms? The answer is yes, we can do that. And in fact, we can do a lot more using blockchain by having the platform where the process flow is taking into account not just a single model like Grameen or a replication of Grameen or a BRAC or BRAC Plus or BMT or any other indigenous model, but we can actually introduce multiple types of models on the same platform, which can be unconditional, completely unconditional, no guarantee, no collateral, or it can require a full collateralization in the classical way with physical guarantees, but no personal guarantees, or it could be zero physical guarantee, but full personal guarantee, or it could be a combination of both. Now, all these are possible on a Qard platform that uses blockchain technology. Again, we still don't have a platform in place, but I'm certainly aware of what's going on, and soon you're going to hear about such platforms, offering their services. These are again two very beautiful projects I would like to share with you. They're not exactly in the domain of zakat and sadaqah, but they certainly have good lessons or good learning for zakat and sadaqah organizations, how they can be used. One is the Indonesian Hara token, mostly for the Indonesian farmers. And this token tried to develop a community of farmers who will be using this Hara token for all of their intra-network transactions when they deal with themselves or when they buy, they undertake some pre-cultivation expenditure, like buying fertilizers or, selling their crops. So both ways, you engage in transactions within the network. So this particular company, which introduced the Hara token, one of the pioneers, in fact, in this field, and which got a lot of attention from very well-known people across the globe, and basically try to create the community of the farmers and make them use it. And of course, there are hiccups. I would just touch upon them at a later stage, that when you try to do a fundamentally good project, you face more obstacles on the way. Your challenge is that much greater. And we have another very good project based in Singapore. It's called InfoCorp project, which basically tries to digitize livestock or cattle by using RFID technology. They try to give an identity to every livestock. And then this livestock, once it has a digital identity, it can be offered as a digital collateral. The Qard-e Hasana platform that I was just talking about basically is working along these lines. It is trying to develop Qard-e Hasana as a financing tool for farmers but where, they can always offer their digital assets. They could be in the form of livestock or any other form of asset that could be digitized. So that could be offered as a digital collateral, and they could be getting instantaneous funding from the platforms. Again, I'll continue with the tagline that it has to lead to better Sharia compliance, enhanced transparency and accountability. And here we will see now, before I summarize my presentation and take questions, I think we have discussed very generally the use of platforms. But I guess within the context of Waqf specifically, or Zakat specifically, we can see some specific uses of applications of digitalization. For example, we know the problem of lost Awqaf, the problem of Awqaf properties that have been, usurped by unscrupulous elements in the society, and sometimes by hostile governments, sometimes by hostile people in the society. So this problem of lost Awqaf is primarily there because the Waqf deeds, they become untraceable after passage of time. Once the Waqf deeds become untraceable for whatever reason, then your preservation of the property becomes a huge, huge challenge. And this challenge can be very well addressed if you do your documentation and put it on the blockchain. So that becomes a kind of immutable deed which can never be tampered with. And then you can always use, once you're sure about the preservation, then you can look at the development possibilities. And for the development possibilities, I just discussed the case of green cryptos. You can also use smart contracts for their development. When you are trying to commingle private capital with Waqf capital, then things can be automated beforehand, a priori. Once things are agreed between the parties, that they cannot go back, on their commitments. Therefore, that this became, contracts that are automatically self-fulfilling contracts. So the self-fulfilling contracts can basically address the risk of non-performance of contracts. And they give an undiluted emphasis on stipulated and designated beneficiaries via impact measurement. And again, if you're introducing impact measurement, you are absolutely certain about whether the benefits are flowing into the hands of those beneficiaries which have been identified, stipulated, and designated by the Waqf. Here we have the example of another product in the making. It is the Ishad platform by IESWC Institute, which is basically a huge, huge project, which is supposed to, again, take care of the preservation aspect of the properties in IDB member countries. And it's open to all Waqf institutions and Waqf donors, and they can benefit from the authentication services that provide additional protection, transparency, and supervision of the Waqf by members of the platform. Now from blockchain, let's very briefly talk about artificial intelligence-based solutions. And then I think we can take questions and answers. Just as blockchain has found a lot of uses and applications for Zakat and Awqaf, we also find several applications being in the process or being completed by Islamic social finance entities. These are basically supposed to be plug and play tools for platforms. Let's see how. There are some of the applications of AI where you can do a proper valuation and identification of Waqf assets, and you can identify, shortlist those assets which have development potential. Again, this has been attempted by IBA for India, and with mixed results, that you can identify very large number of factors, which are related to sort of, spatial variables, which can help you to really identify the valuable or those Waqf assets which have more development potential, which are based on variables which are related to space or location of the property. So from out of, let's say, 49,000 Waqf properties in India, you can actually, running this artificial intelligence based or machine learning based, model, you can shortlist it to perhaps a few thousands or even less. And then you can, start your developmental process. Of course, private capital is required and you have limited resource available. So you can look for those properties which have the maximum growth and earnings potential. Similarly, we have AI has been used as prediction models for micro and small enterprise failure, for better credit risk management. So those Qardiyasana funds or Akhwat type organizations, Islamic microfinance organizations who provide Islamic credit, they can always use these AI-based models for predicting the possibility, the probability of failure of a particular client. And they could be used for classification of zakat beneficiaries. Now, identifying the poor is the most important criteria for not only for zakat organizations, but also for all those humanitarian and development organizations who wants to alleviate poverty, which, as you know, is at the top among the SDGs. And similarly, when you talk about developing a Waqf property, for example, you'd like to gauge the sentiment of the community, how they perceive your particular initiative. Now, here AI can help you based on there are various models of sentiment analysis. They can measure the sentiment analysis based on the the chatter that takes place on through social media channels. This can be analyzed, and based on that, you can say whether the people in that community, they are favorably inclined towards your project or they are hostile towards your project. Similarly, we have impact scoring tools based on SDGs and MAS, Maqasid al-Sharia. And finally, another good, nice project that I would like to talk about is Intelligent Robo Sharia Advisor or Irshad. So this is a project that is already available in the public domain. So I would request all of you to visit this site, irshad.ai, and try for yourself. Here is an advisor who thinks it is well equipped to answer your queries, not just help you to calculate your zakat, but answer your queries relating to zakat, relating to the principles of zakat mobilization, how you can collect your zakat, how you can distribute your zakat, what is the meaning of asnaf, what is the meaning of, what are the 8 categories of asnaf, and so on and so forth. You can ask any question under the sun. It has to be a relevant question. Otherwise, your irshad is going to draw a blank. I have to caution you before that. Please ask relevant questions and you will get, inshallah, very good answers. And you can see for yourself that artificial intelligence can save a lot of time of the real life advisors. That you can also, go to the level of, go to the extent of having a very broad estimate, I would say, of the calculation along with the underlying assumptions. So if you feel that certain assumptions are not very sound according to your fiqh, then you can always consult with your, the ulama that you have faith in, and you can modify the, your zakat estimated liability. So this can always be a starting point for any zakat organization, as where people can, through the web, they can connect and they can get lots of answers to their questions. Now we come to the the last part, I would say, before I pause. Innovation should avoid areas of disagreement with respect to Sharia compliance. We know that zakat and awqaf, there are areas of disagreement. And for example, in case of awqaf, we have seen people, the society voicing their concern more about preservation. And also of late, we find concerns being voiced about development. If the property is not developed, then many people rightly feel that this is a sure pathway to losing the property. You will not be able to preserve it if you don't develop it and make use of it. So there are these, apparently conflicting views about preservation and development. And accordingly, you have laws and institutions which permit you to do certain things, do not permit you from doing certain things. These are all based on customs and Sharia. So ideally, what we find is, as long as something is, when it is an issue of Sharia, most of our contemporary Sharia scholars, they take a very progressive view or liberal view of things. And the general understanding is that you should not do anything that comes in the way of a benevolent act. So whether I do a, permanent waqf or I do a temporary waqf, both can be seen as benevolent acts. So it is perhaps not a very good idea to, put a stop to temporary waqf and only allow permanent waqf. Because in a way we are, disallowing certain types of benevolent action just because of some definitional issues. Whether we call it waqf or not, that's not the issue. The issue is that it is a benevolent act and it has got certain benefits from the society. You can call it waqf, you can call it miyar waqf, you can call it a trust, you can call it by any name or a foundation or any name. But at the end of the day, you should see that it doesn't come in the way of benevolent action, doesn't discourage people from, making cash donations, whether long-term or short-term. If it is long-term, it comes with a time-bound frame, then you can call it a cash waqf or a temporary cash waqf, or it could be, a simple Qardiyasana loan without any, a repayment period and with an open maturity. So it could be any benevolent act. At the end of the day, your regulations, your innovation should actually be allowing that and encouraging that. So what you should be, perhaps, I have seen some examples where Zakat organizations would try to avoid, and very rightly so, areas of disagreement where Sharia scholars might have some reservations about doing things in a particular way, especially when you are talking about views that vary across national boundaries or varies across different schools of thought. There are differences, and these are best avoided when you are planning to bring in any innovation. So one of the things, interesting things is conditional versus unconditional distribution of cash, for example. Now, many of us know that classical scholarship in Zakat basically favors unconditional distribution of cash. And especially in the Indian subcontinent, I've observed in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the scholars, they are very rigid about a condition which is called tamlik, which is making the beneficiary the owner of the donation. So this is very similar to what we call unconditional cash distribution, cash transfer in the context of more contemporary development finance or development finance institutions. They prefer. What is interesting is that there is a very they are all aligned. The latest scholarship in development finance is fully aligned with classical scholarship in this field. They both prefer unconditional cash transfers. They would like to not to make an assumption that the person who is receiving zakat is in any way going to sort of act against his or her own interest. The going assumption here is that the person who is receiving zakat, let him or her decide what is good for themselves. And that's the best way to distribute zakat. And that is what classical scholars seem to vote for. And that is what most contemporary research evidence seems to point out. So that is one interesting aspect of social finance that I just wanted to share with you. And then you have, a lot of expansion has taken place with respect to the beneficiaries of definition. We have some areas of disagreement with respect to the cap on operational costs to be covered under zakat. In Southeast Asia, traditionally, we have 12.5% cap is placed. But I've seen in one of the conferences in South Africa, for example, the ulama very strongly came and advised us not to really propagate this idea of 12.5%. This ideally should be 0%, because the moment you allow the zakat institution to, to charge, to benefit from the zakat it has collected, then you'll be opening a Pandora's box. Now, the point here is that there is disagreement among scholars. In Sudanese scholar, for example, they allow up to a 20% cap. The reasoning being that a lot of zakat that is collected in Sudan is non-monetary in nature, and there is a considerable amount of storage cost or transportation cost that is incurred in the process of zakat mobilization, which it doesn't apply in case of monetary zakat. So there are these regional or spatial or geographical differences, national differences, or fiqhi, school of thought differences, which are best avoided when it comes to having an innovation. And that's one reason why, personally, if you ask me, I never vote for a global platform. We may talk about, global awqaf or global sadaqah or global zakat, but at the end of the day, we have to provide for, we have to accept the fact that there is disagreement among scholars on certain issues, and that has to be best accommodated. We cannot have a uniform line of thinking and force it down to scholars, irrespective of where they come from. So we have to give due respect to the national differences, or the school of thought, fiqh school of thought, and the disagreement that is there. And innovation has the maximum chance of success only when you avoid this. And your target should be what we have been highlighting in most of the slides, that it must lead to better Sharia compliance. And when you are trying to do it through platformization, which enhances transparency and accountability, I think you have the maximum chances of success. I think with this, I would stop here, and perhaps we can take questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad Obaidullah, for the great lecture just now. What you taught really gives us a fresh insight about the current issue in the digitalization of Islamic social finance. We are very, very fortunate to have listened to your presentation today. May Allah bless you, Doctor. And now we are going to have a Q&A session, Doctor. Is there anyone want to ask something? Okay, there is one question in the chat room, sir. Shall I read this to you?
Yes, please read it out to me.
Okay. It is from Ashraf Sulaimi bin Alamshah. Assalamualaikum and hi, it's Ashraf. There's no doubt these new technologies will give benefits to big-scale IES project. The question is, how about private entity, particularly local NGOs? Is there any alternative for small-scale organization? Crafting sophisticated blockchain-based system could be costly, and it would definitely need skilled manpower even to take care of its maintenance.
Yes, I think these fears are a bit misplaced. Of course, there is a lot of upfront cost for the organization that is developing it for the first time. And also there is, blockchain developers, they generally they come very expensive because of the short supply. Again, demand supply determines the price. But when it comes to small organizations, I think they can tie up with some of the known players who have introduced blockchain technology. And to the best of my understanding, you will be able to kind of white label their systems with a bit of modification for you. And it should not be very prohibitive when you are trying to, sort of use an existing product. When you try to develop it from scratch, of course, the cost can be prohibitive, and only those who are financially well off, those firms can do it. But it's not necessary to develop it, starting from the scratch and reinventing the wheel. If some platform is already developed by a certain zakat organization, or they don't have to really perceive you as a competitor, because you have zakat organizations operating in different geographical boundaries, and there is actually evidence, hard evidence, that even the donors, they normally prefer the projects which are physically close to them. So that again is an evidence in favor of local, preference for local zakat distribution. So which means the local platforms, they have a better chance of success. And which also means that you can actually tie up with some other zakat organization from another part of the planet, and they can help you out really if they have no reason to view you as a competitor. So it's quite possible that you can have a very fruitful partnership and reduce your costs. In fact, if those of you, if you are interested, you can email to me. I'd be glad to make some suggestions. But I think in a public forum, it's not advisable to cite specific names. But I can always give you advice, one-to-one advice, if you connect to me later.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor, for the answer. And the next, we have someone raised their hand already. So to Mr. Abdul Fattah Akani Adigun, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. You can ask the doctor directly.
Now, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First, I want to appreciate our guest lecturer for this wonderful presentation as regards the blockchain and some other things that has to do with digital identity. On blockchain, the issue of digital identity and what is happening now nowadays, will it not take us back to look at how we're able to, have a cyber security in order to block some who are going into cyber fraud? And if you are to do that, what kind of cyber security could be employed in order to forestall them from pimping into a blockchain already created for a particular platform? Secondly, what is the layman language one can use to explain a blockchain better for someone who is coming up to learn digital currency? Thank you, sir.
Is the question written somewhere? Or the first question, if I get it correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. You're asking about what kind of better service quality that can come with blockchain. Am I right?
I said, I mean cybersecurity that can be used to block those who are cyber fraud people.
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course, that's a concern. That's a concern about the security of the server, and there are technology is giving solutions again there. This is not something that we see that I can tell you off the cuff. There are a few things which relate to technology which may not be relevant here, perhaps to share. For example, when you are developing your platform on, let's say, layer 2, and not on or layer compared to layer 1, you have a greater, security concern. But if you're building it as a, on layer 1 itself and on some established protocol which already takes care of the security aspect, then you are reasonably safe there. And then again, it is, as I said, it's for a small zakat organization to start from the scratch. It could be prohibitive to develop a fully blockchain-based solution. So it's better to tie up, and partnership should be the solution, where you can find, a larger zakat organization or a NGO or non-profit organization which already is using blockchain, or which may having its own developer team. And, the security aspects are dealt with at their level. They can help, maintain your system, again, for an ijara fee, or similarly, you can hire the entire system, white label it to suit your requirements against a payment of ijara. So this is all possible. But broadly, again, technology has its own risk factors. But for just because of higher risk, we cannot abandon technology, because world is moving in a certain direction, and I don't think it can be reversed in any way. So we are moving towards superior and more application of technology and the better way to do things more efficiently, more effectively. And in the process, there are certain risk factors. At some points in time, they might appear to be very, very severe or very important. But then this is where, again, you find a lot of efforts going in to really address these issues. As we now know, there are decentralized insurance platforms available, which can do a good auditing of your system and your code, and they can identify any security risk before you go online. Similarly, there is always a search for solution when there is a problem. But at the end of the day, you have to look at what kind of tangible benefits that the use of technology is bringing in. If it is something very intricately related to human psychology, for example, the need for transparency or accountability, especially in the context of zakat, which is we know as an ibadah and as a third pillar of Islam. And for good reasons, I have every reason to be reluctant to hand over my zakat to another third party and ask them to distribute the way they want to. I would like to see for myself, because at the end of the day, I'm accountable for my zakat. So where things are very, very sensitive, you have to look for the best way to achieve that. So compared to two platforms, one could be, let's say, just accepts the funds and sends some kind of email-based periodic reports. Compare that to another, platform which has got blockchain technology and where every transaction can be traced by the donor. So you can say that in the short run, people may not mind the difference. If they are not technologically very savvy, they may not see the difference. They really are not familiar with blockchain or reading a blockchain transaction. But you can expect, and reasonably well, that things are going to change. And at the end of the day, the superior technology is going to prevail between the two. So it's always a good idea to adopt new technology. Of course, being at the same time, you have to be mindful of the risk factors, and there are ways to mitigate your risk. What about the second question? Could you repeat, brother?
What I said was, what term can be used to explain blockchain better to someone who is just coming up to learn it?
You want to learn about blockchain?
I'm already into it. I just want something that will let people get it better in terms of explaining. When people see it, do you explain in form of lender? I mean, what do we call it? Tender and lender books of account, so that for them to know that these are column for deficit, these are column for surplus or income or what have you. What other thing can one take in order to, get a correct grasp of what blockchain stands for?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question correctly.
Hello, sir.
I mean, is the question about what are the specific tangible benefit blockchain brings in?
Yeah, you can start from there, sir. Yes, part of it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can follow each and every transaction that takes place on the blockchain. And depending upon, the sophistication of the system, there are currently some developments which even can give you specific information about how the dollar that is donated by you is eventually that is being used by the project, whether it is directly for the beneficiaries or whether it is being absorbed in the operational expenditure or whether it is being absorbed in the overheads. You can actually trace your money directly into the ultimate use that it is put to. So that's the kind of transparency that it can bring in. Now, I will not get into the intricacy of the blockchain technology, exactly what it does or it can do or it cannot do, because first of all, I'm not from that background. I'm more into the application of technology and not technology per se. I can tell you about what are the use cases of blockchain in the context of social finance and what benefits it can bring in and what are the practical examples of that. I can give you several real life platforms that are using blockchain technology. And perhaps I would stop there. I'll not get into the technology per se.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Dr. Muhammad Obaidullah. I think we're gonna have one last question from the chat, okay? It is from Miss Sayuti. Can Sharia transaction using the blockchain be implemented in Muslim countries, considering that digital money continues to grow, causing fewer transactions in direct form or in cash form?
May I request you to just repeat it? I got almost 90%.
Okay. Can Sharia transaction using blockchain be implemented in Muslim countries? And then, considering that digital money continues to grow, causing fewer transactions in direct form or in cash form?
I didn't understand the meaning of Sharia transaction. If you mean it by any transaction that is acceptable in the Sharia framework, then my answer is, there are, if you do a transaction in a way that is free from riba and gharar and other prohibitive elements, haram elements, you can do it, using blockchain, because blockchain is value neutral by itself or Sharia neutral. So you can use blockchain for haram transactions. You can use blockchain for halal transactions as well. That goes without saying. Similarly, even the cryptos, the currencies, the tokens, you can use it for, imparting certain benefits to a certain network. For example, at IPB University, we have a community of students. And within the community of students, we have a certain token which entitles a student to access the library, the online library, or it entitles the, a member, the token to avail of certain other services, maybe to reserve the basketball court for certain hours in a particular on a particular day. So a token can be used, in a halal way, and a token can also be used for near haram way, I would say, when you reduce it to a rampant gambling device. And many of the tokens currently in the market that you will find, they are creating a whirlpool of speculation, which is very difficult to differentiate this kind of speculation from gambling. Many of the tokens you will find, they don't have any inherent value by themselves. They're just being introduced out of thin air and without bringing any value with themselves in the form of a right to certain services or any other frictions that they resolve, which also impart certain value to them. They simply are used from day one. They're used for to create more and more speculation about future rise, future increase, bringing in more, adding more to the artificial demand. And then eventually it becomes a tool of speculation and gambling. So as I said, again, the technology itself is value neutral or Sharia neutral. Transactions themselves can be halal or haram, depending on whether you have the prohibitive elements in them or you don't have, they're free from them. And finally, the end use of it, where it is leading to. Many of the contracts which we say that they're valid in form, not in spirit. Now, these are the ones where you have to see where they lead to eventually. If they could be very well, they look fine in form, but eventually they lead to backdoor riba through the backdoor, or they lead to a huge amount of speculation where national economies, they become sort of, they kind of drown in the whirlpool of speculation. There's a lot of macroeconomic instability coming up because of that. Then, of course, because of the harm that they eventually lead to, Sharia scholars could proclaim or stipulate such transactions to be impermissible or haram, not because they're just, they're halal, they look halal perfectly in form. But if they lead to very strong macroeconomic harm, then of course one has to avoid them. And one could say, in the absence of perhaps a very clear Sharia pronunciation about their being haram, one can always say, just avoid it.
Okay, thank you very much for Professor Muhammad Dr. Muhammad Obaidullah. I believe what have been explained by Dr. has